Once you don the uniform, it's not the weight on the shoulders of the stars or whatever we put on. It's that sense within that, now you are different. You will be seen not as an individual, but you represent something. And especially if you are a woman, then you represent an entire class of women who are out into the world, especially into a male dominated area. Need of the police is that you have to maintain law and order, or you have to prevent crime, or you have to detect crime. All of them require some bit of use of authority and enforcement. As we say, behind every file there is a human being, there is a story, there is maybe some trauma, there may be some need. Every file is not a mere case.
What is the most common misconception as far as cybersecurity is concerned?
It will not happen to me. That we are safe on the internet, and also that हमने अगर कुछ delete कर दिया तो बस अब वो खत्म हो गया, वो exist नहीं करता. We forget that internet never forgets.
Teenagers nowadays and the things that they are exposed to and everything. Is there a fine balance that can be met where the parent is not dying of anxiety and the child is also protected?
We need to start conversations at home. And the conversation should be conversation. It should be a dialogue. It should not be like police interrogation. All of us have to understand that our children know much more than we in that world. So why not, जो हमारा awareness का gap है, why not use it to learn from them? And in that process, also teach them how to be safe. It's very essential to teach your Raja Beta about consent and respect for women from a very early age. Anything with the child wants, we give. So the child is not now used to listening to no. Do you expect when he becomes 6 feet tall, 17, 18, 19 years old, then suddenly you say कि लड़की ने नहीं बोला तो no means no? As a society, the way we bring up our children, the way we treat women in every space, that has to change, and that change doesn't come from changing the woman.
Hello and welcome to the Shazzy M Show. This is a podcast that highlights the vagaries of 21st century living and how to hack it. I'm your friendly neighborhood Shazzy, and the reality is that when I was thinking about this whole podcast, the intent was to see and to meet people who have really managed to elevate in life, and just by sheer will of their existence, they are able to elevate the people around them. My guest today is prime candidate for a conversation such as this today. She's an IPS officer. She has received the President's Police Medal for meritorious service, also for distinguished service. She is the Director General of Telangana Cybersecurity Bureau and the Director of Telangana Forensic Science Laboratories. I am thrilled beyond measure to introduce to you Shikha Goyal, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, ma'am. Thank you so very much for your time today.
Pleasure.
शुरुआत से चलते हैं. It started with botany at Miranda, and then suddenly, how did that transition happen?
So I if I look back, it does seem like a very extraordinary change which happened. But at that point of time, it wasn't much. I mean, it's basically a normal, ordinary, middle class girl trying to actually find some space for herself, trying to do something different. And that is how policing happened. It's true that I joined the Indian Forest Service, which was a natural progression given that I did masters in botany. But somehow I felt that I need to be in a space where there is everything happening, where there is the real trauma happens, or the real transformation happens, to be just in middle of that. Something which was very different to what I am. And I think that is how police happened.
I'm wanting to understand how was the environment for a young Shikha ma'am when she went home to her parents and said कि मेरे को ये करना है.
वैसे ये यहाँ पे तो थोड़े पेरेंट्स भी उसी में लगे हुए थे. नॉट दैट आई हैड टू कन्विंस देम कि मुझे ये करना है. तो पेरेंट्स वर क्वाइट, in fact they were more supportive when my service allotment came.
जी.
मेरे मन में ज़रूर एक बार ज़रा-सा डाउट आया कि मैं क्या ये कर पाऊँगी? क्योंकि लगा कि भई मेरी पर्सनैलिटी से क्या पुलिस में कर पाऊँगी, और क्योंकि मेरे फैमिली में नोबडी इज़ इन द पुलिस, सो आई हैव सीन पुलिस लाइक ऑल ऑफ अस सी पुलिस, which many times is not very happy situation which you see of the police, and you have so many stereotypes,
जी
about the police. So that's what even I had. So for me, ki whether I can, fit into that kind of a system. And there's this image that police means you have to be a macho man, that
जी
kind of an image, and whether I would be able to fit. 30 years back, you didn't have so many women into the police. Now things are changing. So in fact, the parents were very encouraging in my कि नहीं कर लोगी, ऐसी कोई बात नहीं है, ट्राई करो, हो जाएगा ये भी. So I think my parents were very and then ultimately from botany to police is not a very major shift in a way, because you're anyway nurturing life, no? Instead of plants, you are nurturing an environment where life can flourish.
That is a beautiful perspective. I didn't think about it from that way. Lovely. Ma'am, what was that feeling like जब आपने पहली बार वर्दी डॉन की? How did you feel?
पहली बार जब पहनी, सबसे पहली बात तो ये थी कि आई वॉज नॉट द टाइप हु यूज टू वेयर जीन्स और ट्राउजर्स.
Okay.
I was usually in an Indian dress, largely.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Hmm.
I mean, ऐसा नहीं था. I mean, I've studied in a convent school and I've studied in Miranda House. But usually I found comfort in the Indian dress. So I was usually dressed up like that. So पहले तो ये था कि अच्छा, now, wearing a uniform and a trouser and a वो, थोड़ा सा, it was a new thing for me.
जी.
Exciting. And the other part, yes, nervousness
Yeah.
at that point of time when you wear the first time, because you feel you're a different person. I mean, I once you wear a uniform, I am not the Shikha who was born with, or not the Shikha in the normal life. Once you don the uniform, it's not the weight on the shoulders of the stars or whatever we put on. It's that sense within that, now you are different, and you will be seen not as an individual, but you represent something. And especially if you are a woman, then you represent an entire class of women who are out into the world, especially into a male dominated area largely. And therefore, I think that burden is more than the burden of all the tamjam which goes in our uniforms.
Yeah. But ma'am, I'm so grateful कि आप ये share कर रही हैं, because I think the takeaway over here for me is that sometimes you feel shy, you feel hesitant, you feel like oh मेरे से तो नहीं होगा, and then you show the courage to turn up and do it anyway. And I think that really has charted your life so beautifully that yes, I'm scared. Yes, I might be nervous, like you said, but it's okay. I can conquer and I can prevail over that nervousness. And I think this is a message for so many women. A lot of dreams go, unnoticed or fizzle out because of that one step. कि नहीं नहीं यार मेरे से नहीं होगा. I don't want to do it. And this is such a powerful message, ma'am. Seriously. Your Telangana Cybersecurity Bureau head, the Director General. And obviously, I have to ask this very important question to you. What is the most common misconception as far as cybersecurity is concerned?
The biggest one is that it'll not happen to me, that we are safe on the internet, and also that हमने अगर कुछ delete कर दिया तो बस अब वो खत्म हो गया, वो exist नहीं करता. We forget that internet never forgets. So if you have something and you've posted something and you say I've deleted, the chances is there it is there somewhere in the digital space where exist करता है.
Yeah.
इसीलिए I mean, when you're in a digital space, it's so much important for you to be conscious of what you're doing, and so much important for you to take precautions.
Yes. That's a very common sense approach, but sometimes we forget these little basic things. Okay. Ma'am, when I look at your journey, and I have personally been following Shikha ma'am's journey for the better part of 10 years now, I think. I've known you, met you, interacted and interviewed you. And I just keep, this is this one question that I've always meant to ask. And I think in the last decade, I've never asked this of you. But you know how all of us go through burnout and fatigue and exhaustion and everything. What is Shikha ma'am's one 21st century living hack to deal with the pressures of burnout?
See, I think we have to all understand that we are human beings, and everybody will go through a phase of burnout. And burnout doesn't mean that you're working too much. It probably means that you're not ready to take a pause.
Hmm.
you know. So for any of us, it is essential at times to step back. And step back, not that you're going to leave everything. Step back in the terms, the time to think, reinvent yourself, reorient yourself depending on what you're doing, or just rejuvenate. It could be any of these. But there's an essential to have that kind of a thing. And then do it. ये नहीं है कि मुझे सुबह से शाम तक 10 बार यही करना है, मैं पॉज नहीं ले सकती, दुनिया खत्म हो जाएगी, सब कुछ है, कुछ नहीं होगा, एवरीथिंग विल स्टे लाइक दैट ओनली. बट दैट लिटिल पॉज फॉर योरसेल्फ, even if it is a small one. And I also don't, I personally feel that you don't have to go till that point of burnout or a breakdown wala stage. थोड़ा थोड़ा, चाहे दिन में ही 5 मिनट अपने लिए निकाल लीजिए, या हफ्ते में एक बार ही कहीं एक शाम अपने लिए निकाल लीजिए. But have something for yourself, something which you do for yourself, something you do which gives you pleasure, not for anybody else, not किसी और का, या हमें कहीं, you don't have to prove to anybody. So that kind of a pause, taking short pause for yourself, I think is very essential.
And this is issued in public interest. If the Director General is saying it's okay to pause, to all my lovely hustle culture wale mushtande, please, it's totally okay. Ma'am just spoke categorically कि दुनिया इधर की उधर नहीं होने वाली है कि मैं I have to go 26 hours in a 24-hour day. You need to take that time out for yourself.
Definitely.
Yeah, amazing. Did you ever feel, you did mention that, when you joined the forces, it was a very male dominated environment. There weren't very many women and that whole macho super cop. But I have always appreciated this. Every time I met you, there is a soft, gentle quality to you also, ma'am, whenever I've spoken to you. Has that helped you or has that been a deterrent?
Both. Both. But I personally have believed that being soft hearted and strong willed are not opposite to each other.
Lovely.
You can do both together. I mean, you can be equally soft hearted and equally strong willed and manage your work and do well. So somehow people feel that these are contradictions, because if you're a police officer, you should look like that particular way, you should dress a particular way, you should speak a particular way, you should act a particular way. And that goes not only for police, generally for women. प्रिस्क्रिप्शंस रहते हैं कि आपको ऐसे उठना है, ऐसे बैठना है, ऐसे दिखना है, चाहे किसी भी एरिया में हो आप
जी,
चाहे काम में हो, घर, कुछ भी. बट आई थिंक कि वो वर्क नहीं कर, वो दैट्स नॉट व्हाट इज इम्पोर्टेंट. इम्पोर्टेंट इज कि you be yourself and do your job well. So that is essential. So I don't see contradictions in both. ये ज़रूर है कि even after 30 years, so many people come up to me and keep saying कि you don't look like a police officer, and every time I ask them and say कि भाई कैसा दिखना होता है पुलिस होने के लिए, I definitely can't look like a Singham, but I quite sure that I do my job well without looking like one. So it's the will and the way you work or the strength of your mind. Maybe that's more important.
Ma'am, but I must say, I have seen you in uniform and you look super cool, ma'am. So, I mean, not Singham because who needs Singham, but I mean, when you walk in, I think you're right that the uniform exudes a certain, and I noticed that. Has that actually really groomed you also? Even if, like right now, also you're so beautifully dressed and there is a soft divine feminine quality, but I still see that air of authority. And I think that's such an important message to even women in the corporate sector. We have to dress a certain way, we have to power suit up and everything. Maybe we don't. Maybe this softness is our superpower and we should actually celebrate that. And it's so nice to see when a super cop is representative of this, man.
Definitely, because see, how you work, it comes out from the confidence you have.
Ji. Ji.
And the confidence exudes your personality, and that's it. So when I wear my uniform, definitely the pride it gives me, and as I said, the responsibility which comes with it, and that knowledge that yes, you're wearing a uniform, and then you have to ensure that you maintain that dignity of that uniform. But otherwise also, the issue is that your confidence is something, I mean, you might be wearing anything in this world, but if you can't carry it with confidence, then what's the point? And and this confidence also, I say, doesn't come on the very first day.
Hmm.
You know, you have to remember that it takes time. You know, any of the powerful women or any of the women or anybody whom you admire is not that कि वो जिस दिन से वो पैदा हुआ या कदम रखा किसी फील्ड में उस दिन से they are the everybody has their, you know, everybody had their in times of invisibility, or everybody had their self doubt.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that there's so many days I have so much of self doubt about myself, but the important is that you decide that you have to get up and go whatever has happened.
Yeah.
You know, to stand up, to say कि नहीं, you're not going to be giving up.
Yeah.
And कुछ भी है, अगर 1 घंटा पहले भी कुछ हुआ है, you are back into वो and you go out.
Ma'am, what
That
is
is
that
important.
switch? But like, you know, even if there is self doubt, yeah, something calamitous has happened, and you said, "Nahi, I have to get up and get cracking, and I have that 1 hour." Is there a, since we're talking about 21st century living hacks, is there a hack for you that you use के ये switch on करके switch off करके I have to get back?
See, मेन ये बात है कि आपको ना एक कमिटमेंट होना लाइफ में.
Hmm.
You know, whatever you are doing. And I think that commitment gives you the kick.
Lovely.
You know, I've joined the service. So I have that, yes, come, you know, whatever.
Hmm.
आंधी तूफान कुछ भी आए,
जी.
I can't back out.
Right.
I have to go. And I have to go and do my work and do it well. So I think that is something which keeps motivating you and keeps you that, okay, even if this, and the understanding
Hmm.
कि you can't be correct 100%.
Hmm.
You can't also do every time everything perfectly.
Yeah.
That understanding also has to be there, so that you don't, you know, you don't go on a guilt trip, or you don't, you know, are too harsh with yourself.
Right.
Often, most of us, and especially women, you know, we are very harsh with ourselves.
Yes.
You know, हम अपने आप को ही हमेशा मैंने ये नहीं किया, ये छोटा करा, ये गलता है, ये और अच्छा. It's good to introspect, kind, but don't be harsh on yourself. We are allowed to make our mistakes. Important is, are we learning out of those mistakes?
Wonderful.
So that is something which I always said, okay, I might have been wrong. Okay, let me learn. Let me ensure I won't make the same mistake again.
Correct.
वो बहुत important है.
Ma'am, you know, you spoke a little while ago about confidence के साथ to turn up. And you know, in your, given where you are in life professionally, there must be some seriously nitty gritty decision making involved. I am wanting to pick your brain to see what is the mindset. How do you turn up and say, "This is how I have to ask," or "This is the call I need to take"? What is the rationale behind your decision making?
See, one thing is that I've always believed that I don't have answers to everything. You know, that's very important. But that I have the right questions.
Hmm.
And then I have to have people around me who can help me find answers.
Amazing. Yeah.
And another is that I've known that you can't have a dream team. But I've realized that every individual who's around you has something good or something intelligent about it. So, you know, sometimes you feel that even in a crisis situation, somebody you never expected would actually be giving you a answer or a suggestion or even a discussion, comes up with something which is very out of the box kind of a thing. So that level of, you know, one saying कि मुझे सब कुछ पता है
Hmm.
और सारा सबसे अच्छा सब मुझे ही पता है. Where I'm the most intelligent, every idea comes to me only. You know, I'm the most brilliant guy in town. Everything comes to me, and it has to be, you know, my way or the highway kind of a concept, even of whatever. And it happens very easily for us because you are at a particular level. And, you know, police has so much of hierarchy. So, you know, it's very easy to get into that trap. कि जो मैंने बोला वो पत्थर की लकीर है और वही सबसे अच्छी चीज़ है और कुछ हो नहीं सकती. I've never been like that. I've always tried to see that, okay, you know, I'm ready to listen to other people. I'm ready to listen to ideas. But I've also made clear that the decision is mine. And I'm ready to own that decision. Because, you know, as a team leader, I can't also say, and especially in a policing, कि भाई तुम decision ले लो.
No.
No. So decision is fine. But yes, I'm ready to discuss.
This is so relevant for any other job profile also. The willingness to listen and consider counsel and then take that decision without letting your ego say कि मैंने जो कह दिया वो पत्थर की लकीर. I think that is something that all of us can take back, that cultivation of a mindset. So that's really lovely. Ma'am, the first time I interacted with you, we were talking about the she teams. You were heading the she teams, and that's how we started talking. And it's been a fascinating journey. And for everybody who is not from Hyderabad, the she teams is a beautiful concept that was introduced by the Telangana police to kind of make it easier for women to reach out with their problems. And I think it was so successful that it was replicated as a model in different
Many
places
states.
also in
Many
UP.
states. Many states.
So I'm thinking from that time, and it has been a very friendly policing. It has been very, very gentle policing. How difficult or not so difficult, I don't know, I'm asking, has it been to balance rules with gentle policing?
The issue is that police definitely has to work with a great manner of discipline, also a required authority,
Ji.
quick decision making. You have to do, one has to do that. And policing structure or the need of the police is, you have to maintain law and order, or you have to prevent crime, or you have to detect crime. All of them require some bit of use of authority and enforcement. That's very essential. But the important thing for the police, and which has been in the last couple of decades, we've been trying to cultivate in the department, is that behind everything, as we say, behind every file, there is a human being.
Yeah.
There is a story. Yeah. There is maybe some trauma. There may be some need. But every file is not a mere case. There are human beings out there. And even our file which deals with my own personnel.
जी.
अब किसी को छुट्टी चाहिए, किसी को वो चाहिए, जो भी है, it's a human being.
Yeah.
So every file has a human being behind. So we should not treat any case or a file as a mere sheet or a bundle of papers, or which we do mechanically.
Ji.
So the important part is to ensure that down the line, everybody in the police understands that you are interacting with human beings, you are interacting with human feelings, and it is essential to remain human for us while we're doing that interaction. And I guess that is how over the years we've been trying to transform the policing to keep our officers and men and women be aware of this fact that you can't be a mechanical being.
And you do a lot of training also, ma'am, for
we've done a lot of trainings. We've done a lot of soft skill trainings for our people. The way you speak, you handle, because as I said, even when I hadn't joined, there's a stereotype about. And not only a stereotype, as I'm saying, people still say that you don't look like a police. So there's also an image or an expectation on a police officer. And since we also come from the society after all, so many times when people join or are working, they feel that, to be successful, probably if you do these ABCD, you have to behave in a particular way to be counted as successful. And therefore, sometimes you ingrain those qualities which are actually not policing is all about.
Ji.
Even if you have to assert your authority, does not mean that that has to be more than what is. It cannot be excessive. And it can also be done with a lot of gentleness and a lot of empathy, even while you are asserting your authority. So that fine balance is something which we need to keep telling and keep educating our people about.
Ma'am, you spoke about empathy and gentle policing. What is your opinion on this whole AI के अब सब पे निगरानी रखने वाला है, surveillance cameras, or even predictive policing? Ma'am, don't you think that's going to reduce us further to human data points? What are your thoughts on that? मतलब humanity ही निकल जाएगी फिर तो, मतलब ठक 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 finished.
नहीं, जैसे मैंने बोला, ये even अब आज के ज़माने में and especially future में,
जी
where we'll be, even the police will, we've already using a lot of technology, and we'll be increasing the age, more technology. We have to remember that technology is only a force multiplier. It's not a replacement for the human feeling or the human touch or the human contact which you have with the people. It's not a replacement in any way.
जी
And therefore, uh, anyone, you know, and that is not only for the police, even for a normal citizen, you have to remember that we are all first a social being,
Hmm.
all first who actually need to interact and be human and be in touch with each other, rather than being that okay, हम सिर्फ एक दूसरे को किसी एक दूसरी दुनिया में जानते हैं. So in the police, definitely, as I said, even from the physical part of policing, where we started saying that yes, every file or every case has a human being. Same is something which extends to every field,
टेक्नोलॉजी इज वेल
even when you're using technology.
जी
So technology is something which cannot be invasive, and we are very very particular to the fact that there are that privacy and consent are something which the department protects, and also the department honors.
Hmm.
It's very essential for the department to do that, and at the same time use your technology in whatever it ways it helps. It should be something which will help the public, rather than become something which will police them in
Yeah.
those inverted commas.
Yeah.
So we are very conscious of the fact, and that is how we are using, for example, now in the cyber bureau we are using a lot of technology,
जी
but most of that technology we remember that okay, इसके पीछे एक human being है,
Hmm.
उसको ध्यान में रखना है जब भी हम टेक्नोलॉजी यूज करें.
Ma'am, you spoke so much about consent right now, and we're going to come to that. But a lot of times when I see anybody getting online scammed, or actually, let's just divide that into financial scams and everything also, or if a woman has been wronged or cheated or scammed, a lot of times there is so much fear to come out and report. It could be fear. If 90%, 99% of the time, if a woman has been the victim, she'll think some 4 times कि मैं report करूं कि नहीं report करूं. What can you say to kind of to people like that? Like, what can you say that will kind of change the narrative about why you should report?
See, one thing is that first, as I said, most of us believe that crime will not happen to me, it will happen to somebody else. So that feeling we all have. So when it happens to us, we panic.
जी
We are as lost, we completely lost what you're supposed to do. And another thing is that we like to feel that, it's my fault, it's my mistake. So, but if you have been scammed, it's not your mistake. You're just human.
जी
Somebody has, you're a victim of a crime. And being victim of a crime does not mean that you are the one who is at fault.
Yeah.
It's actually the accused who has done it. So, that narrative has to change.
जी
And that understanding has to change. And we have to realize that unless and until we are reporting, there's no deterrence. So when you report, it's like a ripple. You're not doing it for yourself. You probably also, all the others who are probably also following the same path, or probably might go on to the same path, it prevents them from doing it. So
जी
that's very important.
Yeah. Ma'am, I was a little while ago, I was discussing with you how that case in France of the Giselle Pellicot, and so relatively oldish woman. She was she didn't realize, but for the better part of decade, she was being drugged and raped by her own husband, who was inviting his friends over. And in court, when the matter came to light in court, she insisted on getting those videos played, and she made these people, all the perpetrators were sitting there, she made them watch. And the one very impactful thing that she said was, shame must change sides. I am not going to feel ashamed. These people, it's them, they need to feel the shame. And do you think there is hope for us in India specifically, because we are just conditioned to feel shame? कुछ भी चाहे, मतलब कहीं तूफान बाढ़ आंधी आ गई तो किसकी गलती है? लड़की की कंधे पर पूरे खानदान की इज्जत का वेट है. आई डोंट अंडरस्टैंड When will that shift happen? And is there hope for us?
I think shift is happening. Just go back, say, about 40, 50 decade, 40, 50 years back.
Ji.
There was a different situation. Right now, things are changing. One very big thing is that women and girls themselves are very aware. You're aware of your rights. You know what is happening. So there is a shift happening. So I definitely see a light at the end of the tunnel, kind of a thing. But I think a lot of it depends on probably our upbringings. How in the family, even in very subtle ways, even in families which are very well off or which actually are very modern, or maybe even if they're living in very big towns or whatever, there is this, in very subtle ways, there is a difference in which you are upbringing your sons and your daughters. So, and I feel that कि अपने ना, it's very essential to teach your Raja beta about consent and respect for women from a very early age.
Ji.
I mean, you have a small child right now.
Ji.
I don't know how you handle it, but what I have seen is that over the years, we have stopped saying no to children. बच्चे के मुंह से डिमांड बाद में निकलती है, मतलब वो तो छोटा पैदा ही होता है, उसको डिमांड बाद में होती है, हम पूरी पहले कर देते हैं. ठीक है,
गिल्टी मैम.
नहीं तो मतलब ना बोलना हमने छोड़ दिया.
जी.
ठीक है, एनीथिंग विद द चाइल्ड वांट्स वी गिव.
बिल्कुल.
So the child is not now used to listening to no. Now you imagine that the same child, do you expect when he becomes 6 feet tall, 17, 18, 19 years old, then suddenly you say कि लड़की ने नहीं बोला तो no means no? उसने तो ना सुनना सोचा ही नहीं है कभी, तो उसको कैसे पता है कि no means no होता?
That's
So the issue is that when from childhood you teach कि अच्छा भाई, अच्छा आज ये टॉय नहीं मिल रहा, नहीं बोल दिया तो नहीं मिल रहा. नहीं कि आप रोना, you throw a tantrum or you get a toy, or even before you want something you'll be given. When we don't, we suddenly think that when he becomes that old and he'll suddenly find respect for women, or he suddenly start taking no for an answer. And it's not only no from a woman. Do you really think at a teenage 17, 18, many times they are not taking a no from the parent also, because you never taught them that there are times when you will have to hear no. आपकी हर डिमांड, हर ख्वाहिश, हर कुछ पूरी नहीं हो सकती है. तो शायद हम लोग भूल गए हैं.
And I don't think present cinema is kind of helping that case. I don't know, Bollywood not so much, even Tollywood also has this लड़की ने ना बोला मतलब उसके मन में हाँ है वाला कॉन्सेप्ट जो चलते रहता है. That I think that narrative also needs to radically change.
See, anybody and everyone of us, or any media, I mean, whether it is the police, whether it is the media, whether it is the entertainment industry, is in a way a reflection of the society.
जी.
Maybe presented in whatever, but it's a reflection. As I'm saying, अगर हम लोग अपने सोचें तो हम, if you be honest with yourself, many of us, and when we'll realize that we've not started saying no to anything. So if you don't say, the child doesn't learn, and these things that will not come when your child grows up and goes out to work, for example. Do you ever tell him to be prepared for the fact that you might have a woman who's working with you, or maybe might be even be your boss, or maybe working with you in the team, or a colleague, and that she may be more competent and she may be better than you, but you don't get threatened with it. We haven't taught that. So when they find a girl who's competent, they're not able to accept that. They might be able to accept a competition from a man, but not from a woman. But that's something which we haven't taught. तो हमारी ज़िंदगी इसमें निकलती रहती है कि भाई बेटी को, लोग मुझे आते बोलते हैं कि भाई लड़कियों को सेल्फ डिफेंस की ट्रेनिंग सिखाओ, लड़कियों को क्या डूज एंड डोंट्स करने हैं ये सिखाओ. तो आई वुड से कि यार लड़कों को सिखाओ ना कैसे बाहर बिहेव करना है, लड़की को क्यों सीखना. So that narrative has we have to teach our sons how to respect, rather than teach our girls how to protect themselves. That is something is required.
Ma'am, in fact, I'm thinking maybe even the police should start a program, the Raja Beta program, the Raja Beta Correctional Facility. Ma'am, we spoke about shame. We spoke about some startling things about how, yes, अपने राजा बेटा को सिखाओ. आपने अभी कुछ समय पहले बोला कि बदलाव आ रहा है, परिवर्तन आ रहा है. आप लड़कियों को देखिए, पिछले 40-50 सालों में, तब से तो एटलीस्ट वी आर डेफिनेटली मोर वोकल. Based on the numbers and given the fact that you see this day in and day out, do you think there is a bit of a systemic change happening in the Raja Betas also? Yeah, they're going from bad to worse.
No, definitely there is. Uh, it's not that it's not happening. That awareness has started to come, and uh, it also becomes inevitable. Just like we feel that if any workplace has more than about 25-30% women, automatically the workplace has that environment of women. So I guess that also that is coming, that change is coming. But yes, as a society, the way we bring up our children, the way we treat women in every space, that that has to change, and that change doesn't come from changing the woman.
Certainly.
It comes from changing that entire environment, and that environment changes if both men and women move shoulder to shoulder together. When men realize that they have also to speak up.
Yeah.
They should speak up for women, they should support women, and if not support, you should not be an impediment. I guess that's enough. हम लोग अपने रास्ता हम लोग खुद ढूंढ लेंगे, बस रोड़े मत डालो. That's enough, I guess, for us. We'll find our way.
Absolutely, absolutely. Ma'am, since मेरा कर्तव्य बनता है to ask the cybersecurity head a few important pointers when it comes to online security. And I know ये तो हमको रट चुका है कि अपना पासवर्ड किसी और के संग ना शेयर करें वगैरह, but any other few pointers that are essential that we should be mindful of in the cyber world?
प्रॉब्लम है कि हमको रट तो गया कि पासवर्ड ना शेयर करें, अननोन लोगों से फ्रेंडशिप ना करें, बट आज भी लोग वही कर रहे हैं. एवरी डे हमारे पास करीब 1200-1300 कंप्लेंट आती है.
Oh God.
और इसी तरह से आती हैं, where you have shared those personal details, whether it's your bank account, ये वो फलाना ढिमकाना. कोई पुलिस वाले का वीडियो आ जाता है, आप उसको इतना डर जाते हैं कि उसको लाखों रुपए ट्रांसफर कर देते हैं. तो
That's the latest thing, no?
the digital arrest.
Yeah.
And I say कि हमको तो मूवीज ने वैसे बदनाम कर रखा था कि पुलिस आखिर में पहुंचती है. अब आजकल लोग सिर्फ हमारा वीडियो देखकर भी हमसे डर के पैसे देने लगते हैं. तो आई very difficult how people believe that kind of a thing. But jokes apart, these are very traumatic experiences for the victims
जी.
who undergo this. So the thing is that one has to remember that just like we used to be safe in our physical world, वही precautions इसमें भी लेते हैं तो ठीक हो जाता है.
जी.
अब आप सड़क पे चलते हुए थोड़ी हर किसी को बताते रहते हैं मेरा बैंक अकाउंट नंबर ये है भाई, ठीक है, मेरा ये पासवर्ड है,
जी.
ओके, या मैं ऐसे ही वो करता हूँ. हम नहीं बताते ना किसी को, या मैं तो आपका फ्रेंड हूँ, मैं बातें कर लेता हूँ. यू डोंट एंगेज इन इट, बट सेम थिंग वी डू ऑन द इंटरनेट.
Yeah.
सो बेसिक वही है, कोई रॉकेट साइंस नहीं है. अपने आप को प्रोटेक्ट करने की चीजें वही हैं जो आप फिजिकल वर्ल्ड में करते थे, वो वही यहाँ पे करनी है.
Common sense.
Common sense is not very common these days. That's the problem.
Yes.
So that is exactly what one needs to do. Because if you are doing that, then you're perfectly safe. I mean, it's such a beautiful medium.
Yes.
Imagine the kind of knowledge you have. Imagine the kind of ease it has brought in your life.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
I'm sitting here, you can order, you can play, you can work, you can learn, you can do wealth of things. So it's a beautiful medium. But yes, everything comes with a flip side. And how do you use technology absolutely depends on us.
Yeah.
And, like there were criminals in the physical world, there have to be criminals in the internet, because that is there. So the way we used to protect ourselves there, we need to protect ourselves. If we are smart enough, घर में ताला लगाया है तो चोरी नहीं होगी. अच्छा क्वालिटी का ताला लगाना
जी.
तो अब पासवर्ड तो लगाया है, बट वो मेरी तरह 1 2 3 4 5 6 लगाया तो कैसे होता है,
Yeah.
वो टूट जाता है 1 मिनट में. तो और so all those things are just simple like that.
Yeah. I'm speaking about safety, and this is a question that I'm sure a lot of our parents watching will be interested in. It's I sometimes now, I have a 3-year-old daughter myself, and I just think, my God, these teenagers nowadays and the things that they are exposed to and everything. For a parent, also, that level of anxiety that my child is on the internet, and it's we don't know who has access to them or what are the things that they have access to. And the converse side is ke, you're a hormonal teenager, like mama बात बात पे आप क्यों रोक टोक करते रहते हो, मेरे काम में आप क्यों टांग अड़ाते हो, I want respect my privacy mummy. तो ऐसे माहौल में is there a fine balance that can be met where the parent is not dying of anxiety and the child is also protected?
हमारे जो बच्चे हैं और द न्यूअर जनरेशन,
जी,
so they are internet natives
true.
and we are migrants.
Yes.
Okay. So there's a huge gap.
जी,
And this gap is not about your love or your care or anything. This gap is about the gap of awareness.
जी,
Okay. And that is why it is and this is the gap which also the accused they try to exploit.
जी,
Now, the important part is that we need to start conversations at home.
hmm,
And the conversation should be conversation. It should be a dialogue. It should not be like police interrogation. Okay. So, ये क्या है, ये क्यों किया, ये कैसे किया, ये नहीं पूछना है. आप anyway, I mean, all of us have to understand that our children know much more than we in that world. So, why not जो हमारा awareness का gap है, why not use it to learn from them? And in that process, also teach them how to be safe.
जी,
When you have conversations, it will come out. So that is very important. And then you also have to have an example. अब आप कितना अपने आप को digital hygiene maintain करते हैं.
Hmm.
When a child is very young, I mean, teenagers will know more than you, but when a child is very young, will also learn from you.
absolutely.
So that is also important. And for teenagers, whether it is the internet or whether it is the physical world, conversations are important with your child. Somehow, we've forgotten to communicate with each other. We don't communicate these days. Our interactions, and communication doesn't mean कि आपको बच्चे को बिठा के 2 घंटा बिठाना है. It can be small, short time. There has to be a conversation.
जी,
And all conversations need not be on something which has a very, agenda based at the back of the parent कि ये आज बताना है. But अगर family में sharing, बातचीत करने का माहौल बन जाएगा, तो I think these things can be resolved. So that is something which I think most important is that.
and I think the child will also feel like, if something has happened, I know that my parent is in my corner and I can actually talk to them and get that resolved.
Definitely, that circle of trust
जी,
to be built is extremely, extremely important.
जी,
From the child, from a toddler till whatever age your child is, that is very important, because many times the children don't tell their parents what's happening with them and end up in even bigger problems.
Yeah.
Just because they don't want to share, and they go and finally talk or consult with somebody, maybe their friends, who will all be the same age.
जी,
तो उनको भी लाइफ का उतना ही एक्सपीरियंस है जितना इनको है.
जी,
तो जब many times when you learn from your mistakes, and somebody of the same age may not be able to comprehend, and if they've never seen, they may advise very wrongly. We have so many cases where the person has got into more trouble by following the advices or counsel by other people.
Yes, जी,
And those because they haven't seen life. That is where the parent, and that is what we as parents also have to, in a way, sell ourselves to children. Ki bhai, just because of the virtue of the fact that we've been on this earth for more years than you have been, we've seen a lot more than what you have seen. And by seeing that and doing our own mistakes or seeing other people's mistakes, we have also learned many things.
जी,
And that experience which we have is something which we can help you with.
yes.
So I think that is required to be done.
फिर भी Are there a few red flags that parents can keep watch for? मतलब कुछ बच्चा पहले नहीं कर रहा था, suddenly करने लगा है, or something that a parent can kind of be like, अच्छा, this is a different thing.
Definitely. See when children are trouble, usually certain behavioral changes will happen. For
जी.
example, sometimes a child who was very aggressive in nature could become very quiet, or a very, I wouldn't say aggressive, somebody who was very active would suddenly go into a cocoon, or it could be vice versa,
जी.
right? If you see that your children are uh, suddenly probably spending more money, or they seem to be lost or disturbed, or the fact that there's a lot of use of VPN,
Hmm.
all those kind of things. So they can be red flags that something might be amiss somewhere. So we have to be a little alert of what goes around in our own small world also. Sometimes होता है कि जो अपने बिल्कुल साथ में या पास में हो रहता है, हम लोग दूर की चीजें बहुत देख लेते हैं,
जी.
पास वाला चीज को मिस कर जाते हैं. So I think that consciousness has to be there in a parent. And as I said, the although we don't need to be paranoid, but we should remember that crime can happen to anyone. Okay, so that has to be at the back of the mind, not to trouble you, but to be careful.
And ma'am has categorically stated before, I will repeat it. Policing नहीं करनी है. Be vigilant and aware, but loving. है ना मैम?
हाँ, and दूसरा एक हमने पेरेंट्स के लिए की सहायता के लिए we've taken out a parental guidance which tells you that all the various things which children use, all the various apps and games and all which they use, what are the parental controls available? Because as parents, we don't even know that, okay, there is something where, probably you might not be able to use in a teenager, but you can definitely use in your younger ones, those parental controls which are existing, but we don't know. So if anybody goes to our website of the Telangana Cybersecurity Bureau, you can view that and use those things.
Oh, that's very helpful actually. And we'll link it to the video so you can see, you get the details from there. Ma'am, before we wrap up, and I know that we've really had a wonderful chat. कहाँ से कहाँ हम लोग चले गए, but I have one final question that I want to ask you. Like I said, this is a podcast that highlights the vagaries of 21st century living and how to hack it. For all those people who are watching right now, is there one very important or relevant hack that you would like to share that has worked in your case that will probably help elevate other people as well?
See, one thing is that the wish to be coming out of your comfort zone, and coming that from person like me, somebody who wears a cloth, their clothes till they can be qualified to become pocha. That is how one becomes so much comfort, you get into that zone and becomes your happy place. So for me also, every time, I keep on, like, okay, Niklo,
Keep edging out.
you have to keep nudging yourself to be out. So I guess being conscious of what you're doing, be conscious of yourself, and also this ability to nudge out of your comfort zones, nudge yourself to do something. And while doing that, also taking a pause, relaxing, rejuvenating yourself, and then moving on.
Beautiful.
So I think probably that's what works for me.
I think that's phenomenal. Real growth lies beyond your comfort zone, and it is so important to press pause ever so often. And if Shikha ma'am, who I assure you is incredibly busy, can say that, then I think for all my hustling friends, that's a very important note to remember. Shikha ma'am, it has been such a beautifully informative conversation. Thank you so much for your candor and your time.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I hope it's useful for someone.
I certainly think there's a lot of important tips that people are going to take out of
In
our
fact, I've
conversation.
learned something about myself only while talking. That, okay, this is something which I can also do now.
मैम तो फिर आपको वापस बुलाना पड़ेगा.
Pleasure always.
Thank you, ma'am.